Committee meeting, roll call. I note that everyone is here. Thank you for that. Confirmation of the agenda. Resolution that the committee confirms the agenda for the meeting of November the 15th, 2023 as presented. Moved by Member Chapman, Member Cookett. Further discussion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no delegations this evening. Next order of business is the motion to approve the November 1st, 2023 Finance Committee minutes. And the resolution would be that the committee adopts the minutes, noting no errors or omissions. A mover and a seconder, please, Oswald and Member Roussel. Further discussion? All those in favor? The motion is carried. Action items. First item is the public meeting staff report for the 2024 operating budget, and the resolution to bring that forward. That report FIN 27-23 respecting the 2024 operating budget update be received as information, and the council directs staff to present the final version of the 2024 operating budget for review and adoption at a future council meeting of council. Moved by Member DeRose. Oh, sorry. Other side of the table. Okay. And a seconder by Member Roddy. Discussion or the report. Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you and to members of council, we just wanted to give council an update this evening before we presented the final budget, hopefully on December 6th. So there's been an improvement since council's first look at this budget. Estimated levy increase for 2024 is around $6.984 million. So I'd like to remind council that the starting point for this budget this year was around 5.5. This was due to the fact that they had funded $100,000 from last year's council initiatives to offset the levy last year, so that reversed this year, and that's your starting point. Also included in that is the changes in CPP, the two-tiered calculation. We also added the full-time headcount, and there was some estimated decreases in, increases in WSIB rates and EI rates. So right now, the tax levy impact is 7.32%, but since we had some growth to this point, the tax rate impact is around 4.6. So that's great news for this council. Last night, the Police Service Board just approved the budget. Those numbers are also in here. The EECC Board will be presented their budget on January 16th. The only other major changes were that WSIB rate came in a little bit lower than we anticipated, which was just announced 2 weeks ago. And we're just awaiting the OSIF and CCBF numbers, so those will be the final changes that we perceive to have to happen before the 6th presentation. And we're waiting for the MPAC assessment to be able to finalize the tax rate for 2024. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions council may have, but I've included some of the notes that council wished in this budget presentation regarding admin costs and more detail, economical detail that was brought forward with some of the questions you had.
Member Cookett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned the impact assessments are not finalized. How much difference would that make in your projection?
So we have the ability to see what the amount is right now. We just wait for the roll book to be basically solidified with MPAC. So I don't anticipate any changes. I believe that what we have in the online analysis tab will be what is in the roll book. I don't think I've ever seen it change at this point. It's just, we just can't really show the final tax rate until we have that for the town. We also would be waiting for the county to do all their rates before we would be able to strike all the tax rates for 2024.
Member Osley?
Yes, the levy is 7.32.
Correct.
What would that translate into the average tax increase for the average house in Elmer?
So the average impact would be about $89 for the year on the, I think it's $214,000 average assessment. So $7.40 a month.
What's that figure again?
$7.40 a month on average.
That's good to know.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. We have a motion then that's been moved and seconded. And we'll call that motion to a vote. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Second item is a staff report regarding fees and charges bylaw. That report, CL Clerk 56-23, entitled Fees and Charges Bylaw Update, is received for information, and that council endorses the recommended amendments to town fees and charges as specified in report Clerk 56-23, and further, the council directs staff to provide notice of the intended amendments in accordance with the notice policy. A mover and a seconder, please. Member Dorsey and Member Cookett. And the report, please, is that you, Rob?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and two members of the committee. So this is really a routine report that staff try to undertake each year. When we're looking at fees and charges, really what we're trying to do is making sure that we're adequately recovering costs where it's appropriate, and also that our charges are in line with local and comparable municipalities. So this year for the recommended amendments, council will notice that the majority of those fall within the planning and development departments. I do want to note that Heather James has done a significant amount of work on, selecting relevant and comparable municipalities to make sure that our fees are competitive and that they're also fair. I would like to also highlight to the council that I think that we're providing a much higher level of service in planning and development than we have historically, and that's a large part of the reason that we are comfortable recommending some of these changes. We're in a position where the scope and the quality of the services that we can offer in that space are very competitive. We're hearing good things from the development community, but we have taken on some additional headcount to be able to offer that service, and this is really an attempt to try and, again, make sure that we're fair and that we're fairly recovering some of those fees. So if there are specific questions about any of the fees that are included, between Heather and myself, we'll be able to speak to those. But yeah, that's really the report. And with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Thanks, Josh. Do the members of the committee have any questions? Member Dorsey?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the table that you guys have, the cash in lieu of parkland dedication for residential consents. Was that one of the recommendations from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for legislative updates?
Your work, if I may speak to that, that dollar amount actually comes out of our parkland dedication bylaw that was passed in 2021 that set the rate for it. So that was just taking that number out of a separate bylaw, consolidating it into this fees and charges bylaw.
Thank you for that. Are there any other further questions? Seeing none, the motion, the report's been moved and seconded, and we'll call that motion to a vote. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Next item is a report regarding water and wastewater rates for 2024. The report FIN 2923, respecting water and wastewater rates 2024, be received as information, and that council acknowledge and approve the water and wastewater rates for 2024 as presented in the water and wastewater study conducted by Watson and Association 2021. A mover and a seconder? Moved by Member Chapman and seconded by Member Ryan. And the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you and to members of the committee, this is a standard report that happens at the end of the year so that we're able to forward the rates to Earth in order to get in their system for Jan 1. So the study was completed in December, or approved in December 2021. It was completed by Watson. Overall, this year, we're looking at a 4% increase between water and wastewater, which hasn't changed since the study was presented in 2021. All the information that has been fed into this study hasn't changed relatively that much. We ran through, Watson and I ran through the debt capacity with the water tower, ran through those numbers in there also, and it wouldn't change the rates at this point. So it would be 4% for 2021 increase overall between the two.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yep.
Any questions regarding the report? I'd just like to comment that the report was done several years ago, and to have its same value today, considering the magnitude of the water tower project, just puts the value into, if you're going to do something, it was obviously done right to maintain that projected increase. Good work on the part of everybody that made that happen. Okay, got it moved and seconded, and we'll call the matter to a vote. All those in favor? And the motion is carried, thank you. And the final report is regarding the emergency issue, emerging issues with provincial funding. The report CAO 67-23, respecting emerging issues, provincial funding, be received as information. Moved by Member Rafi and William. And report. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to highlight for committee that there are indications that the province is entering a province-wide economic slowdown. If the province enters an austerity period, we can expect grant funding to be quite lean for the upcoming years. Overall, Elmer would be better positioned than most municipalities for this challenge. We do have, a sterling reputation with the development community right now due to our increased level of support, responsiveness, and timelines. So that we have a lot of shovels in the ground around the town, and all signs indicate that continued growth in our community will be strong, even if there is a shockwave that goes through the province. Reductions or absence of grants may mean deferral of infrastructure replacements or issuance of debt. But again, Elmer is in a relatively better position than a lot of other municipalities to deal with this. Relevant to growth, we do need to make inquiries with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs respecting their housing targets announcement from last August. Elmer could definitely get some retroactive funding, but we don't know yet if they're going to go back retroactive to us for 2023 or if we're only going to be eligible for funding for 2024, because they haven't announced how housing targets will be determined for municipalities of our size yet. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions committee might have.
Thanks, Andy. Any questions for Andy? I have one, if I may. You mentioned shovel-ready. Do we have a variety of projects that should projects come along, whether they be small or larger, that we have documents that we can do in a timely manner?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do believe we have certainly a lot of capital planned for next year. I think our challenge is going to be taking the increased funding that we get from assessment growth and funneling it into reserves to fund future capital projects. So certainly there will be, next year will be, 2024 will be the largest capital year ever that the town of Elmer has seen. So we're quite excited about the work being done. And this could all favorably shake out to lower prices on tenders and awards. The uncertainty in the development market could actually benefit us.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, we'll call the matter to a vote. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Are there any new business or inquiries by the members? Member Oslach?
Yes, your Chair. I would like to commend Heather on this final operational budget. And she did a really good work on this budget, and it's open transparency.
I think your comments could be shared by all of the members of the committee. Thank you.
I just have to say, this was a team effort. This was not just my doing, so, but I appreciate the comments.
All right. We've completed our docket, and we'll accept a motion to adjourn. Member Brulese, seconded by Member Chapman. All those in favor? And we are adjourned at 7:15. Thank you, committee.
Welcome to, I guess you could call this the last council of the year, depending on when you begin, because we began on November the 16th of 2022, and now we're November the 15th of 2023. So this is the last council of the year. Let's begin with a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of November the 15th, 2023, with the addition of the report Operations 3023, respecting a tender award for the East Elgin Community Complex winter maintenance 2023-2024 season.
Mover and a seconder, Councilor Desrosiers and Councilor Owslach. Discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interests? We have a public meeting this evening. First, we need a resolution to recess and enter the.
That council do now commence a public meeting at 7:22 p.m. to receive input from the public with respect to the Manager of Planning and Development Report Plan 3123, Planning Evaluation Report, Red Line Revision for Phase 3 for Draft Plan of Subdivision, and application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0523, part of lots 85 and 86.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councilor Chapman. All those in favor? Carried. All right. So now we are in a public meeting. The clerk, would you read the procedure?
This public meeting is taking place under the Planning Act 1990 as amended. At this public meeting, council will hear public representations regarding the planning evaluation report respecting red line revision for Phase 3 for draft plan of subdivision 34T98001 and application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0523, part of lots 85 and 86, concession north of Talbot Road. Please note that those who do not provide comment or written submission prior to the decision of the appropriate authority may not be afforded the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Council will hear comments in the following order. First, we'll have the presentation of the staff report by the Manager of Planning and Development. Then we'll hear from the agent or applicant, then the public, and finally, staff and the clerk available for any questions.
Thank you. Could the Manager of Planning and Development please provide the report? Heather?
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of the proposed red line minor revision to the draft plan of subdivision is to revise the lot fabric within a portion of the third phase of what's known as the Cottonwood subdivision here in the town of Aylmer. The proposed modifications, as you'll see on Figure 2, is to revise the lotting along the west side of Cottonwood Boulevard. In this drawing, it'll appear as what would look like the south side of Cottonwood Boulevard. I had to turn the drawing slightly in order to be able to appropriately fit it on the page. So what looks here like the south side of Cottonwood Boulevard. Those are the lots that are impacted by the proposed red line revision to the draft plan of subdivision. What this will allow for, it will permit 16 semi-detached dwelling lots, which represents lots 1 to 16, as per the red line revised plan. The lots would be further subdivided later through an exemption from part lot control, which would ultimately create 32 semi-detached dwelling units. Lots 17 through 36 fronting onto Aspen Parkway will remain for single detached dwelling lots. It's important to note that draft plans of subdivision do not require statutory public meeting, therefore they're non-appealable. And given that this is, the County of Elgin has deemed the red line revision to the subdivision plan as minor, public agency circulation was not required for the red line revision. However, a public meeting And public circulation, as well as public agency circulation, was required for the zoning bylaw amendment. So essentially, the red line revision to the subdivision, as well as the zoning bylaw amendment, were circulated as a whole, because it just becomes too confusing to public agencies and the public. It's important to note that the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to essentially implement the proposed red line revision by rezoning a portion of the lands about 4 acres in size, located, as I mentioned, on the west side of Cottonwood Boulevard, or as you see on the south side of Cottonwood Boulevard, from the residential type 1 special provision 8 zone R1-8 to residential type 3 special provision 12 zone to permit the 16 semi-detached dwelling lots with special zone provisions. The following zone provisions are proposed: the reduced minimum lot area from 600 square meters to 500 square meters. And this would equate to from 280 square meters down to 250 square meters for 1/2 of a semi-detached dwelling. Second, reduce minimum lot frontage from 18 meters down to 17 meters, and an increase in lot coverage from 40 to 50%. As you'll see, Figure 1 just shows the location of the Cottonwood subdivision. Figure 2 shows the proposed red line revision that I've already been speaking to. And then moving on to Figure 3 shows the proposed zoning schedule for the zoning bylaw amendment. In terms of planning policy analysis, I can conclude that the proposed red line revision to the draft plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the county's official plan, and as well conforms to the town's official plan. As mentioned, moving on to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, I've already listed to you the proposed amendments that have been requested by the owners of this subdivision. I do want to note that the request, in my opinion, is appropriate, as it will increase the housing supply within our town. It's also an appropriate use of the lands. As well, it's important to note that the proposed changes in zone regulations will have a minimal impact on roadways, servicing, and stormwater management. Our Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations has also reviewed this proposal and has no concerns. They provide comments later on in the report that I'll speak to. Also thought it was important to note that this may look familiar to some of you. That's because Phase 3 of this subdivision received a red line revision in 2022, and the current zoning, R1-8, came into force and effect on October 28th. That should be 2022 as well. The reasons why this Phase 3 of the subdivision is being proposed for another red line revision and zoning bylaw amendment is to kind of change the product offerings that the Cottonwood subdivision would offer to people, providing a mix and a range of housing. And this is kind of in response to a lot of the changes in market demand and in the economy, which I think is a very great option for our community. Moving on to the zoning bylaw amendment was circulated to public agencies for comment. I can note I received comments from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority. They have no concerns on the Phase 3 of this application and the zoning bylaw amendment. As well, I received comments from Canada Post, just your standard comments, basically stating that community postal boxes are required. I do want to note that these comments have been provided to the agent on the file. Moving on to staff comments, I only received one staff comment. That was from our Associate Director of Infrastructure and Operations. He is of the opinion he feels that the servicing that's already in place is adequately sized to support the proposed residential changes, and that revised grading, servicing, and drainage plans, including the calculations, will be required for town review through the subdivision agreement process. It's important to note the application was circulated to neighboring property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. No comments were received at the time of writing this report, and as well, no comments were received as of the public meeting this evening. No concerns in terms of financial impact. I've identified the strategic priorities that it meets for the town. In conclusion, it's my opinion that the proposed red line revision to the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 05-23, are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the County of Elgin's official plan and the Town of Elmer's official plan. And I'm recommending that the request for the red line revision to the draft plan of subdivision be recommended for approval and the zoning bylaw amendment be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thorough as always. Is the applicant or agent present if you wish to speak to the application? Yes, sir. If you do, you approach the lectern and hopefully there's a mic there. Yeah, there is. State your name and
Okay. Good evening. My name is Alexandra Hosson, and I'm here with you. I'd just like to note that we have reviewed the staff report, and we are in favor of recommending approval of the red line revision to the draft plan by the county, as well as staff's recommendation to town council to approve the proposed, my apologies, rezoning to the site-specific R3 zone. I would like to thank staff for the positive recommendation, as well as members of council for your time and consideration of the application this evening. Thank you, and I am available for questions if there's any questions of council.
thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Can the clerk confirm whether there are members of the public who wish to speak to the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there were not.
Has the clerk received any additional communication related to the application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have not.
Okay. Does council wish to ask any questions of Deputy Mayor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick comment that after many years of very little happening on this project, it's nice to see the developers are right on top of things and adjusting to changing market conditions.
I agree. Any other comments from council? With no further discussion, we can adjourn the public hearing, and council can consider an action on the report. Josh, can you read the recommended resolution?
That council do now close this public meeting at 7:33 PM and reconvene the meeting of council.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers and Councilor Van Raes. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we can consider action on the report. Can you read the recommended resolution, Josh?
That report, Plan 3123, regarding planning evaluation report, red line revision for Phase 3 for draft plan of subdivision and application for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0523, part of lots 85 and 86, concession north of Talbot Road, in the geographic township of Malahide, be received, and that council of the town of Elmer recommend approval to the approval authority of the county of Elgin for a red line revision to the draft plan of subdivision, and further, that council of the town of Elmer approves the proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0523 in accordance with the bylaw 6923.
Okay, mover and a seconder for the resolution. Councilor Van Raes, seconded by Councilor Chapman. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda. We have a resolution for that?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, that council of the town of Elmer receives report Plan 3223 regarding planning evaluation report, application for consent to sever number E7923, and that the application for consent to sever number E7923 relating to the property legally described as Lot 13, Plan 290, and known municipally as 210 Caverly Road, be supported in principle with the recommended conditions for reasons set out in that report, and further, that the report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration. And then, should we start with that one, and then I'll read the next resolution afterwards?
Sure.
Okay.
Mover and a seconder. Councilor Chapman and Councilor Oslach. Any discussion on 6-1? Seeing none, all those in favor? Sorry, is Heather giving the overview on this one?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. So essentially, I'll keep this really brief. Essentially, what we're doing, this is a residential parcel that we're essentially splitting into two. There's an existing home and detached garage on the property. The lands to be severed will be the area where the detached garage is. The lands to be retained would be where the existing house is. proposed that there will be a single detached dwelling built on the proposed severed parcel. I have no further comments on this report. It meets all planning policies. I do want to note, however, I do need to, I'm requesting to add an additional condition for this severance. The condition is regarding the removal of the detached garage off the severed parcel. A detached garage cannot be be on a parcel that's residentially zoned as a standalone building. It's a bit of a technicality, but unfortunately it was missed in this review. However, it has not been missed for this council meeting. So I'm recommending the following condition, that the owners have removed the detached garage on the proposed severed parcel to the satisfaction of the town of Elmer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments by council? Councilor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just have clarification on the agenda? My apologies. 6.1, there's 6.11 and 6.12. Are we talking about them together collectively right now,
No.
or is it going to be separate?
We're talking 6.11.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried, thank you. So now we have 6.12.
That report finance 2823 respecting the appointment of an auditor for 2024 be received as information, and that council directs staff to present a bylaw appointing Scrimger and Company CPA Professional Corporation as municipal auditors for the town of Elmer for the year 2024.
Moving to seconder to put it on the table, Councilor Chapman and Councilor Van Raes. Who's doing the report? Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add comments regarding Christine Scrimminger and her team. They've basically helped us through the transition of, not having treasurer for the past few years, and then onboarding myself. We've improved the internal controls and the walkthroughs that we do as finance through process controls. They also share best practices, so they have quite a few municipalities in the area. So she's constantly, sharing best practices, ideas that she sees at other municipalities for us to implement. And she always makes herself available to weigh in on certain changes in accounting practice, trending things in accounting-related processes, and also helping us with interpretation on any accounting policy changes that need to happen. So even though the costs are rising in the industry, I did talk to her just briefly to find out roughly what the cost increase would be, and she basically said we found efficiencies in the way we're processing with her with audit, and the cost of inflation would be the only additional cost for 2024. Hoping council would consider to appoint her tonight, because there are some efficiencies that we can find through the year-end process of 2023, which will be completed in March, that she can start some of the testing for 2024. That's the advantage of appointing her ahead of time.
Council. Councilor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I will agree that, Christine does a fabulous job and staff's recommendation of appointing her is a good idea, I just wanted clarification. Are we required to have, was there an RFP for this appointment or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for IT services, for audit services, for proprietary services, we don't necessarily have to RFP through the procurement policy. It's always an option if we need to, if council wishes to have me complete the RFP for the audit appointment, we can certainly do that. It's not necessary per the procurement policy that we have currently.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? As carried, thank you. We'll go 6.2, 6.21, and 6.22 are covered by the same motion, is that correct?
Yep, correct. That the November 15th, 2023 consent agenda be received for information, and that council approves the minutes of the regular meeting of council and the finance committee meeting held on November the 1st, 2023.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Rahi. Questions, comments, corrections to the minutes? I do have one correction to the minutes. I believe on the November the 1st mayor report, it talks about, you're putting that up on the screen? I don't have it in front of me right now. Thank you. Yeah. It talks about the fact that Andy and I met with representatives from the Ministry of Health, and the representative was actually the division director of the Nurses and Professional Practices Division. And it's nice if we could get 2 additional nurse practitioners, but that was the ask, and it wasn't something that was decided, so that should probably be changed so that it doesn't read as if we actually got 2, but we're hoping, and I think the odds are good, but we actually did not get promised the 2. So I'd like that changed. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Seven point one, Manager of Planning and Development and Director of Corporate Legislative Services. Dedication of lands for the public highway. I have a report or resolution.
That report, Plan 3323, entitled Dedication of Lands for Public Highway White Street Extension, be received for information, and that Council of the Town of Elmer considers passing the bylaw 7023 and provides 3 final readings.
Over to seconder, Councillor Oslash, Deputy Mayor. Report.
3, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer that to the Manager of Planning and Development. She did the lion's share of the work on this report.
All right.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, May of 2023, the town sold lands municipally known as 105 White Street to 2246 971 Ontario Inc., also known as Remtech Industries Inc. At the time of the sale, there was no open municipal road in front of the lands because there had never been any need to extend White Street beyond 105 White Street. As part of the sale, the town provided a temporary easement over the unopened road allowance for access until the town dedicated the unopened road allowance as a public highway, what I refer to as the White Street Municipal Road Extension. A bylaw is required to dedicate the lands as a public highway. So within my report, I just kind of provide a little bit more background information and the analysis. Is there any questions on my report?
Council? All right. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Carried. Item 7.1.2, Chief Administrative Officer, Parking and Traffic Bylaw. A resolution.
That report, CAO 7023, respecting the parking and traffic bylaw update, be received as information. And that Council directs the parking and traffic bylaw be finalized and presented for future.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers, Councilor Chapman. And Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before you are proposed revisions to the traffic and parking bylaw. One large component of this update is the modernization of the bylaw to include revised definitions around ATVs as required under the Highway Traffic Act. We also included some provisions around electrical bikes and scooters that were really not considered in the previous revisions to this bylaw. In terms of fines, you'll see that we're requesting the minimum fines be increased to $30. It really didn't previously make any sense to actually lay fines because those minor fines, simply because the cost of laying the charge and administering the fine would likely have exceeded the recoveries. Parking fines in particularly are intended to generate revenue in order to cover a cost of the enforcement. So this is one of the few areas where, as a municipality, we strive not to be revenue neutral. We actually do want to make a little bit of money off of it. We don't want to gouge people, of course. But in everything else that we do, we try as much as possible. You know, you just approve the water rates. We're not looking to make any money off of the water rates. We want to provide our service as cheaply as possible. This is an area where the fines should recover a bit more of money for us. Certainly, all the fines are reviewed by a justice of the peace, so there is a potential that they will review these rates and still deem that what we're proposing is too low of an increase and make adjustments. I don't think it's likely that they'll go and say that our rates are too high, but the judge could do whatever they want, but generally they base it on what they've seen from other jurisdictions come across their desk. Parking around the East Elgin High was something that's addressed in this report as well. There isn't any clear solution there that would not impact any of the homeowners around there. And certainly, the school board administration is well aware of the situation. They do own land that could be utilized to address the problem, and if they do bring forward something, we're willing to work with them to address it. But at this time, there isn't a clear solution for the town, and if you are willing to walk 2 minutes, there's parking available in that area. So that's kind of what we're left with at this time, is that there isn't a clear solution. Parking around Ann and Jane Street is often an issue. There are 2 apartment buildings there that contribute to this issue, but both of them meet the parking requirements provided in the zoning bylaw, which is for 1 spot per unit. So they're both in compliance with that, and the town, occasionally we get requests that will intervene with the property owners on their parking lots. We don't have any mechanism to do that. The only mechanism we have to intervene or make comments upon how they use the parking on their lots is during the development phase. So now that the developments are done, there's nothing the town can do to approach the property owners and talk to them. Certainly, we are recommending a pilot program to start tonight, actually, if council's willing, because otherwise no overnight parking over the winter takes effect this evening, and that would allow parking on one side of Ann Street over the winter, and normally throughout the year we'd also allow parking on one side of Ann Street. And this is just a pilot program, and we hope to get signs, if council endorses this and we go forward, we hope to get signs in place before the snow flies, at which time we would do enforcement. And part of this is to try to balance the interest of both parties. There's people who want to see significant enforcement there to clear off the cars from the street, but we also know that there are people who routinely need a place to park their cars at night, and to go from 0 enforcement to 100 overnight and give everybody tickets every day isn't going to fix the problem anyways. I think staff are being pragmatic here in the fact that we aren't indicating that this is going to fix the issue. This is a pilot program. It's trying something and seeing what happens and evaluating it over the next year, and then we will probably have to go back and make further adjustments. But we do think there's a need to try and do different things here to see if we can find a solution for these people and address their concerns. Going forward, I know there was some idea about allowing something similar on Jane Street. There are so many driveways backing onto Jane Street that we really think that with the snow clearing issues that could be created in the snow piles, that would not be feasible to do. So we're only suggesting allowing the parking overnight on the one side of Ann Street at this time. So if council is in favor of that, the Director of Operations has some discretion to grant an exemption until we get those signs put up for that, until we get the bylaw passed, and that would be kind of the direction that Rob would take from this meeting tonight. And so with that, I'll try my very best to answer any questions council might have.
Council. Councilor Rahi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Andy or maybe Rob, how do you do snow removal in a scenario when there is cars lined up? When you go past, you do leave a berm of snow and then the cars have to try to get out of that. How do we manage that? That'd be my first question, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there isn't an ideal answer. You hope that they move throughout the day, and the next time you come, there you can get it. Obviously, we hope that it isn't going to be a heavy year for snow, so it's not a bad problem. A lot of municipalities will do alternate parking on the side of the month. That would reduce the amount of parking spots because there are, I believe, 3 driveways on the other side of the street. So this is, again, it's a trial, and if we do encounter issues, then we'll probably be before you to try something different next winter.
Follow. And this would only be for this winter's season, or this season, and then we would review it again next year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, depending on how much evidence and information we get, if you know, there is a potential that this winter will be mild for the start and in like a lamb and out like a lion type of thing, is what the almanac's saying. But I don't know how much you rely on that. If that happens and we don't have a lot of good information, then we might come forward to council and say, we'll try this for another year, but either way, we'll keep council and the public informed.
Thanks.
Is there any feeling out there amongst the staff that, you know, this is a pilot project, so perhaps the pilot will tell us something halfway through the winter that it's just impossible because we've had a terrible winter? You can still come back to council and we can change this particular recommendation, right? So we're kind of looking at, we'll take a chance, and if it really messes up, we'll be back talking about it. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Just a question to Andy. Trying the pilot project in that particular area may temporarily at least resolve the parking issue. But the real issue is the requirement for only 1 parking space per unit. Can we, in a future bylaw in areas of heavier density residential, change that number? 1.25 would have fixed this.
Heather looks like she wants to answer the question.
The requirement for 1 parking space per unit is actually listed in our zoning bylaw. That's actually one item I've been looking at for our housekeeping amendment to our zoning bylaw, which I'm proposing, hopefully for the winter of 2024. I am looking at increasing the parking for apartment buildings from 1 space to 1.25 or even possibly 1.5 to accommodate even visitor parking spaces, because some of these developments didn't even account for visitor parking spaces, and they require visitors to park out onto the street. So yes, it's not just a problem in this area, in Jane and Ann, but in other areas I'm seeing it with other developments as well, and that is something I'm reviewing.
Considering a modification. Thank you.
Thank you. We were looking forward to that report, Heather. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. 7.13, inclement weather policy resolution.
That report CAO 6823 respecting an inclement weather policy be received as information, and that council endorse the proposed inclement weather policy.
Mover and seconder. Councilor Van Raising, Deputy Mayor Barber, and Andy is doing the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the inclement weather policy essentially establishes our current processes and what I believe are pretty much uniformly used throughout the county. My understanding is that the town will be the first municipality in Elgin to have such a policy. However, I've not reviewed all other municipalities' full policies in detail. I do like to have policies in place for any area of significant liability or financial decision-making related to staff. So I think it's a good idea for council to have a policy in this place or something similar. This one is based upon other jurisdictions that have had policies in place for some time. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions council might have.
Council. Councilor Rahi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Andy, how often would a township have I'll call it a snow day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Like, would you say once a year maybe, or like
And
historically?
Oh, Josh probably knows. The only thing I'll say is that more routinely, what we do is send people home more than close down for a day. So if the weather turns bad, I know a lot of the other municipalities around noon, if there's a big storm warning coming, they'll make the call because they're more rural in nature and it's harder to get to. They'll make the call and shut down the day before, but we rarely do that.
Anecdotally, I've worked here about 5.5 years, and it's happened once.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Item 7.14, multi-residential and condominium waste collection policy.
That report CAO 6923 respecting a multi-residential and condominium waste collection policy be received as information, and that council endorse the multi-residential and condominium waste collection policy as presented.
Mover and seconder. Councilor Desrosiers and Councilor Van Raes. And we have
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report recommends a policy on multi-residential and condo waste collection. This is an issue that can consume a lot of council's time and attention. We're trying to get ahead of that issue and present a policy that is based upon what's been done similarly in other jurisdictions. The intent here is to have a clear understanding of what kind of standards a developer needs to build to allow for us to later avoid inheriting a potential problem. The policy also provides an incentive to developers in that the town would permit our vendor to collect the residence's materials with our own materials, and we'd also cover the landfill costs. So that would result in considerable savings to the condo and multi-residential landowners. So we're hopeful that provides a good incentive without giving everything away to them. They'd still have to pay the per unit collection cost. And also the condo owners and multi-residential owners would still have to manage and enter into agreements with the vendors themselves. That will keep our administration very low, and we won't have to directly deal with complaints or issues that are originating from private property. So, and this would also be for recycling as well, which we no longer control. So they'd already have to do this to get a similar type of service for recycling services now. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions council might have.
questions or comments, council? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Item 7.15, GCAO, Rural Ontario Municipal Association of a resolution.
That report CAO 7123 respecting the Rural Ontario Municipal Association 2024 conference be received as information, and that council approves of a delegation request to speak to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing upon the status of boundary discussions with the Township of Malahide.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is really a follow-up to what occurred at our AMO delegation this past summer. Very well-attended delegation with the Minister of Municipal Affairs. I think there was 20 or 30 bureaucrats in there. With us, it was well-attended to discuss the boundary adjustment, and certainly their request was that we go to Roma and follow up and provide them an update in a delegation. So normally we wouldn't attend the Roma conference because it's more for agricultural communities, but there is a benefit to us going to this, and obviously we've previously offered to Malahide Township that they may desire to jointly provide this update to the ministry, so that offer certainly remains open.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Good. Glad to see them moving forward quickly with the boundary adjustment proposals, and hopefully Malahide will accept our invitation to come with us. All those in favor? 7.2, a number of resolution notices from other, did I miss 7.16?
Addendum, yeah.
Oh, that's right, it's a new one. So I'm sorry, we'll go back to 7.16, which deals with the tender award for the community complex resolution.
That report Operations 3023 entitled Tender Award, East Elgin Community Complex Winter Maintenance 2023-24 season be received for information. And rather than the ECC board, I'll state the council, that the council accepts the tender from Kettle Creek Landscaping Limited to complete the works in accordance with the East Elgin Community Complex Winter Maintenance 2023-24 season tender documents.
We're in the seconder, Councillor Rahi and Councillor Chapman. Are you making the report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the Director of Operations will.
Oh, sorry, Rob, all right.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I want to thank Council for allowing me an opportunity to present this report tonight. To provide a little background, you'll notice that it is an East Elgin Community Complex Board report. Unfortunately, the timing of this tender, getting it out and getting it back in, was such that I'm unable to get it to the board prior to us probably needing some snow removal services. The next board meeting isn't until January. So I want to thank the co-chairs for finding a process whereby I can get this tender awarded and in front of both councils. We'll present this report at this council and again at the township's council as well. So just to kind of give you an idea why there's a East Elgin Community Complex letterhead on the report. This is a fairly straightforward tender for services. We significantly revamped the previous tender and put it out for a tender call for snow clearing in the parking lot. We broke it up to allow staff to call for any number of services. For example, if they just needed the entranceway plowed, along with the front walkway, and not all the parking lots needed to be plowed, or one or two of the parking lots. So it's broken down, I think, to give the staff at the complex a number of options with respect to snow plowing. Kettle Creek was the low tender award, so we're recommending that council accepts the bid from Kettle Creek Landscaping.
Thank you, Rob. Questions or comments from council? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. How is this going to roll out? We pass it, if we accept it tonight and pass it, Malahide has their decision, probably what, tomorrow night?
Yes.
How are they going to blend?
Well, I have spoken with the mayor of Malahide concerning this, and Rob mentioned that there was a difficulty in getting this to the board, so we've kind of agreed. This isn't a perfect solution, but it's the only one that's going to work right now, and at least both councils will have approved it, and we've kind of agreed that this will take the place of an approval by the complex board. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it just ultimately the approval of the tender is reliant on both the town of Elmer and the Township of Malahide councils individually approving the recommendation.
Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Rahi.
I just have a comment through you, Mr. Mayor. I have quite a bit of experience in snow removal in industrial and commercial. I know it seems like a big number, but for that size of a lot, I do think that it is quite fair. That's it.
Good, thank you for that comment. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried, thank you. So now we're at 7.2, which are the municipal.
That council endorse and provide a letter of support onto the relevant Government of Ontario Minister for the following resolutions. And we've got the Municipality of North Perth Council Resolution regarding catch and release justice in Ontario, the Municipality of North Perth Council Resolution regarding Till Death Do Us Part Act, and finally, the Township of Terrace Bay Council Resolution regarding strong mayor powers. And I will note that these were specified by Councillor Chapman as requested municipal resolution notices.
Mover and a seconder. Councillor Oslash and Councillor Rahi. Comments from the council? Councillor Chapman.
So through you, Mayor, can I speak to all three together?
Certainly.
So the Township of Terrace Bay Council Resolution, Strong Mayor Powers. I'm supportive of the resolution related to this correspondence. Even though strong mayor powers do not impact Elmer at this point, I believe they undermine democratic process and compromise the role for councillors have the representing residents. I would like to see council endorse the resolution from Aurora and Terrace Bay and follow up directly with Premier Ford, Minister Calandra, and Associate Minister Rob Fleck. That's the first one, and we can, so the next one is from North Perth, and it's the Catch and Release Justice in Ontario. I also support this resolution from North Perth and Midland. We require improvements to the current state of catch and release justice in Ontario, as it is exhausting for police services having to manage the repeated arrest of the same offenders. I would like to see council endorse the resolution from North Perth and Midland and follow up directly with Premier Ford, MPP Rob Fleck, MP Karen Vecchio, and copy the Aylmer Police to demonstrate our support. The third one is from North Perth Council Resolution, Till Death Do We Part. I support the resolution from North Perth regarding the Till Death Do We Part Act. The stories regarding couples entering long-term care who are torn apart and are heartbreaking. And I would like to see council follow up directly with Catherine Fife, Waterloo MPP, Rob Fleck, MPP, and the municipality of North Perth to communicate our support. Just can I do a short comment on each one? So strong mayor powers are more in the larger areas, but if this continues, it could affect all municipalities, and taking away the democratic process is just not in our favor. So that's the first one. The one regarding the catch and release, it doesn't make sense to continually arrest the same people and then let them out and commit the same crime, and it's counterproductive to the police as well. It does not make it for safe communities, and we need to show our support to our police force that we don't agree with this process. And the final one, Till Death Do Us Part, I'm just going to give you an example. My dad was going into a nursing home, and my mom would have been left in the home alone. She did qualify to go to the home, and fortunately, she got to go to the same one as my dad. My dad died 3 months after they went into the home. If this didn't take place, chances of my mom spending her last days with the person she had lived with for 50 years would not have been possible. With the new process, when someone goes into a home, they could go as far away as 100 kilometers away from their home, and couples would not see each other at end of life. It's not fair to be separated from the person that you've loved for an extended period of time because of this process of finding them a home wherever. We should try to keep our elderly together. It's better for their mental health, it's better for their physical health, and it's better for the families as well. So that's my...
Thank you for those comments. Anyone else from council? Deputy Mayor Barber.
All three resolutions are worthy of support.
Thank you. I would certainly agree. I spoke to the resolution dealing with fixing the Long-Term Care Act, dealing with Till Death Us Do Part at County Council yesterday, and we passed a resolution to support Catherine Fife in the Waterloo region. I feel strongly about that one as well. And it's also an indication of how democratic we are not, because this particular bill was first passed in 2019 and went through second reading 3 years later, and it's still held up in standing committee before it goes to third reading. And the government is dragging its feet on it. It's been years, and everybody's approved it in the House. But it just gets stalled by the process we use in Parliament, which means that it gets sent to a standing committee who may pick it up or not pick it up. So it's not a very democratic process when you take a look at that. So I think the more pressure we put on the government, the better for this particular fixing the Long-Term Care Act, and it should be fixed anyway. Yeah, I certainly agree with the other two as well, so thank you for bringing this up. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried, thank you. New business and matters of urgency, new business 8.1, Deputy Mayor Barber, notice of motion regarding the consideration of amendments to the Residential Tenancy Act. We have a resolution.
Certainly, so I'll just note that this is moved by Deputy Mayor Barber from the previous meeting through the notice of motion process, and Deputy Mayor Barber, with your permission, I'll read the resolution out if you'd like.
I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Whereas the Ontario government has acknowledged an affordable housing and housing supply crisis, communicating a targeted approach to build 1.5 million homes by the year 2031, and whereas nearly 1/3 of Ontario households rent rather than own, according to the most recent 2021 Census of Population, and whereas the Ontario government has reported that Ontario broke ground on nearly 15,000 purpose-built rentals in 2022, a 7.5% increase from 2021, and the highest number on record with continued growth into 2023. And whereas the Residential Tenancies Act 2006 provides for the maximum a landlord can increase most tenants' rent during a year without the approval of the Landlord and Tenant Board. And whereas the Ontario government recently strengthened protections for tenants with the intention of preserving affordability by holding the rent increase guideline for 2024 to 2.5%, well below the average inflation rate of 5.9%. And whereas the rental increase guideline protection does not apply to rental units occupied for the first time after November the 15th, 2018, which leaves an increasing number of tenants susceptible to disproportionate and unsustainable rental increases compared to those benefiting from legislated increased protection. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Aylmer requests provincial consideration for amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act 2006 to ensure that all tenants benefit from protections intended to preserve affordability, and further that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Paul Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Honourable Rob Flack, Associate Minister of Housing, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities.
Thank you. We have a mover with Deputy Mayor Barber. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Chapman. Okay. Pete, did you want to talk to this?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. The resolution was well worded by Josh, and I thank him for that. People move into apartments for all kinds of reasons. When they're starting out, when they're winding down, and everything else in between. And I think for a lot of folks that are moving into an apartment, one of the considerations is that they know what the rent is on that particular time, and they can budget accordingly. Now, everybody appreciates that the cost will rise, and the Residential Tenancy Act provides a guidance for what type of, or what amounts those increases can be. In addition to the numbers that are quoted within the resolution today, if the landlord's costs are negatively impacted by a small increase, they can apply to the landlord and the board and request a modification to the prescribed rate. Where it all falls apart is the buildings that are constructed since November 2018. In other words, the buildings that the Affordable Housing Act are intended to help those that are looking for accommodation now. They won't be covered under the Landlord and Tenant Act as far as residential increases go. So what may be affordable today may not be affordable next year. And it just compounds as we further go down. What's the point of spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, providing a one-time opportunity for people to move into affordable housing, when the next year and the year after that, it begins to work its way out where it's no longer affordable. And affordable in Elmer right now for a 2-bedroom apartment using newer constructions, using their rates as a guideline, is more than $1,600 a month. And that's the affordable part. The people that don't qualify for the affordable tendency are paying close to $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And that compares very closely what larger centers are doing. But all that aside, the purpose of this particular residential resolution is to try to get the support of the other municipalities in Ontario and the Ontario government to make the sorry, I lost the terminology for the rent control, to make the rent control apply to all buildings, all apartment buildings within the province of Ontario, irregardless of their date of occupancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? I notice the resolution is to be sent to all Ontario municipalities, all 444. Very good. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, it's carried. Reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon, 9.3, we have some resolutions.
That council gives 3 readings to and approves the following bylaws. Bylaw 6923, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw 5799, being the zoning bylaw of the town of Elmer. Bylaw 7023, being a bylaw to dedicate certain lands as part of a public highway. And finally, bylaw 7123, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the regular council meeting held on November the 1st, 2023.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Oslach. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are there any inquiries by members? Any statements and committee reports? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. The Remembrance Day services at Springfield and Elmer were well attended this year. The weather cooperated immensely. Not like last year, it was raining.
Yes, they certainly were. There were a lot of people there in Elmer, for sure. And everyone is always so grateful to see the parade that happens in Elmer as well. A lot of people involved there. Any other statements? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Just to follow up to that, Your Worship, it was nice to see the number of younger people that attended the Remembrance Day service. If we can get to the kids, it'll make a big difference as we move forward.
Agreed. Anyone else? All right. Next item is report of the mayor. I included a kind of list of what we have accomplished in the last year. I know it isn't the finish of a calendar year, but it's certainly the finish of 1 year in office. Some of these items, of course, were started by the council before us, but nevertheless, I think it's important to kind of note what we have done in the last year. Kind of reminded me of the old saw joke about asking your children, well, what did you learn in school today? Oh, nothing, right? You know, don't remember what happens, but you know, it's quite a number of accomplishments, and especially first off, looking at staff. Staff presented 224 reports over the 20 meetings of this past year, 224 reports. And these are extensive reports, all of them. So thank you for providing us with a wealth of information to make our decisions on. And of course, there were major studies, you can read this for yourself, that happened during the past year, some of which are quite critical and quite important to the future of next year, especially the growth analysis study and the land use studies and the boundary adjustments, which boundary adjustment procedures that I didn't include in there. And there's a list of new directions and initiatives. You want to pick out a few that I think are fairly important. The town hall public meeting was well received. It had upwards of 40 people, and I plan to do this every year. There also a major change in the earth appointment process. I think we were the first municipality in Earth to actually go through a process that was an interview process and not just somebody that was appointed by the mayor, usually him or herself. This time it was actually an interview process, and it was the first time done, and I think that's a great way to do it. We did this, also mentioned 3 reports at AMU. This was very significant for a town our size. 3, and this is thanks to Andy. I think he put together 3 very good reports in terms of delegations to the ministers. And we did see the minister in every case, which is not always the case. They were great. We also began a governance process at the complex, which is very significant, I think, for the future as well. And it's something that I hope will finish in the next coming year. Oh, yes, and the first delegation ever of East Ogden students. I was very pleased to see that happen, and I thank Andy for mentioning the parking issue that they brought forward dealing with East Ogden Secondary School, so it wasn't forgotten in terms of the requests that they made. So anyway, the list of things that we did do during the year, and I'm proud of you. So thank you very much. Any notice of motion? There's no meeting closed to the public, so we have an adjournment resolution.
That council do now adjourn at 8:22 p.m.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Van Raes and Councilor Desrosiers. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.